Guys, welcome back to another Bokosi YouTube video. Today we're going to top 24 wide receivers for week 10 of fantasy football. And boys, before we get into it, we have a ton more exclusive content on our SOBET. On our SOBET, every single primetime game we post our start, sit, and sleeper. We also post our top 10 waiver wire, top 10 trade targets. So much extra information on our SOBET. Go check it out. It's the first link in the description. First wide receiver, again, every single time, as long as he's healthy, it is Cooper Kupp. He is so safe. So good for fantasy, not much to be said here. And on our wide receiver 2, we got Tyreek Hill. This is the first time we've ever had him over Diggs or Jefferson. Tyreek Hill, he's been a beast, has over 1,100 yards on the season, and it's only been 10 games. He's a PPR monster, gets a ton of yards, and is amazing for fantasy. Next up, we got Stephon Diggs. This is obviously assuming Josh Allen is good to go. Josh Allen misses, obviously Diggs has to be lowered on the rankings. Assuming Josh Allen is good to go, Diggs has been phenomenal this season, and it's a revenge game against the Vikings. And our last player in this tier, our wide receiver 4, it's Justin Jefferson. Going against the Bills, it may be a tough matchup, but Jefferson's a beast. The clear alpha wide receiver on the Vikings. He's obviously an amazing start for week 10. Next up, first player in the next tier is Devontae Adams. He went crazy last week. He absolutely destroyed the Jaguars. Yeah, answered everyone's questions if he was not good anymore after that horrible 1.7 point game the week before. Obviously, he's a beast. He's our wide receiver 5 for the week. And at wide receiver 6, we got A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown only had 3 catches last week, but he did get that touchdown that saved his week. The week before, though, close to 40 fantasy points. He balled out against Washington. It's a pretty good matchup. The only one problem is if the Eagles blow him out, they could run the ball a lot, but hopefully A.J. Brown will get his work. He'll always get red zone targets. He's a great option. Next up, we got DeAndre Hopkins. Was still solid last week, had the touchdown, but wasn't quite as utilized as the 2 weeks previous. Matchup against the Rams, we're expecting Ramsey to not... If Ramsey follows, obviously it's a tougher matchup, but Ramsey doesn't really follow receivers that much. So Hopkins still should have a pretty good game in week number 10. And our last player in this tier, we got Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle has been amazing with Tua. He's averaging over 18 fantasy points per game, and a lot of those bad weeks are without Tua when Tua got hurt. With Tua, Waddle and Tyreek are both fantasy studs, and they're amazing in week 10. First player in the next tier, we got Chris Olave. With MT down for the year, Jarvis Landry barely even playing the season. Olave has been the clear wide receiver 1 for the Saints. He's been utilized like crazy. I believe he is second in the NFL in air yards, getting so many targets, absolutely getting force-fed. Again, because there's basically no other receivers on this team. And he's got an amazing matchup against Pittsburgh, who is the worst team in fantasy against wide receivers. And at wide receiver 10, we got Deebo Samuel. This is assuming he does return. Deebo didn't play last week. Ayuk's been on a good run. CMC has got his points. With the CMC trade, Deebo is a bit lower on our rankings. CMC is going to take some rushing attempts, take some targets. Deebo, though, still an amazing talent and still is a top 10 wide receiver for us in week 10. Next up, we got CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb hasn't been getting force-fed with Dak Prescott returning. Still putting up great numbers, but again, not elite target share. Still really good though. Still definitely an elite wide receiver 1. And it's a pretty solid matchup. Could be tough if Jari follows, but again, solid matchup against the Packers. And our last player in this tier, it's Mike Evans. Mike Evans has been very good. Last week, I think it was less than 10 points, but he still get those 11 targets. The one problem, though, he's going against Seattle, and Tariq Woolen has actually been really amazing at cornerback. Last week, Kyler Murray threw a pick to him in his first game against the Cardinals, and he was covering D-Hop all game. He just didn't really seem to target D-Hop at all in the second half. Woolen's been playing amazing. Mike Evans, we still think will get his targets, will get his work, but it is a pretty tough matchup. And first player on the next tier, it's Evans' teammate, Chris Godwin. Again, Seahawks have been so surprising this year how good they are, especially on offense. But again, Chris Godwin, both him and Evans have been getting force-fed targets, which gives them a pretty good floor. Definitely an elite wide receiver 2 in this week. Our wide receiver 14 this week is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Over the past 2 weeks, he has 19 targets, but it just hasn't equated to much. He hasn't been amazing. I think under for sure 12 points per game, but this week against the Bears just let Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle absolutely feast on them. It could be a super high scoring game. TJ is out of this offense. Lots of targets are coming to St. Brown's way. At wide receiver 15, we got DK Metcalf. Again, going back to the Seahawks being a surprise team, their offense has been surprisingly so good. Geno has been awesome. DK and Lockett have both been great. Again, DK getting targets, getting touchdowns. Don't know how he's healthy with his knee injury, but thankfully he is. When he plays, definitely a high-end wide receiver 2. And right after DK, we have Tyler Lockett. Both of them, like I just said, lots of touchdowns, lots of targets. The Seahawks offense has been amazing. Last week, their stats were actually very similar. Both had 5 catches. DK had 1 more target. He had 6. Lockett only had 5. Both had the touchdowns. Again, this offense is good. It's a decent matchup. We love both these guys. And last player in elite wide receiver 2, we got Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk, thankfully, again, is getting force-fed targets. Had over 20 fantasy points. Looked awesome against the Raiders, and it's a good matchup against the Chiefs. Expect them to be down again. Have to be forced to throw, which means more targets. Love the upside for Christian Kirk this week. And next up, our first wide receiver 2, it's Juju. Juju, to start the year, wasn't amazing, but over the past 3 games, all of them over 15 points. I think it's like 25, then 22, then 18. He's been balling out. Kelsey's obviously still the clear target number 1 in this offense, but Juju has cemented himself as the clear wide receiver 1 for the Chiefs. The Chiefs score so many points, Juju's always going to be a good start going forward. At wide receiver 19, we got Amari Cooper. He's a tough one to rank because he has been so good when he's at home. They are at Miami in the heat. So unknown what's going to happen. Again, he performs way worse when they're on the road. In Miami, it's a toss-up. Don't love the upside, but again, he's been so good, he has to be wide receiver 2. And our last player in this wide receiver 2 tier is DJ Moore. DJ Moore, he's going against the Falcons 2 weeks ago when he played them. He balled out over 25 points last week, though. They got boat raced by the Bengals, only scored around 6 fantasy points. He was great the 2 weeks prior, bad last week. Against Atlanta, we like the matchup, and we still like DJ Moore. First player in the next tier, Joshua Palmer. He was awesome last week with Keenan and Mike Williams missing. This is again assuming they both miss again. If Keenan plays, obviously Keenan is higher, dropping down Palmer, but assuming he doesn't play, Palmer is definitely a low-end wide receiver 2 with upside to become maybe even a high-end wide receiver 2. Great last week against the Falcons and a great matchup. It is a tougher matchup against the Niners. Still like the upside though. At wide receiver 22, we have Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney to start the year was terrible, but the past couple of games, he's been solid. Last week against the Dolphins, put up 17.5 points. Justin Fields is finally stepping it up. Yes, a lot of it's on the ground, but he still is throwing a decent amount of pass yards. Mooney right now is looking like the clear wide receiver 1. Claypool's there, but with Claypool still being new, Mooney's the wide receiver 1 at the moment, and we really do like him for week 10. Wide receiver 23, we got Allen Lazard. Christian Watson's hurt again. Hopefully he plays, but he's hurt again. Romeo Doubs is hurt. This offense is so depleted of weapons. Allen Lazard is the clear-cut wide receiver 1 on this team, which gives him upside, should get a good amount of targets, was great last week against the Lions. Is a bit of a tougher matchup against the Cowboys compared to last week, but still being the clear wide receiver 1 for Aaron Rodgers, you have upside every week. And our last player of the video, we have George Pickens. With Claypool leaving this offense, it helps George Pickens and it helps Deontay Johnson. We still expect Johnson to get more targets, but George Pickens is more efficient with his targets, has likelier chance to get touchdowns, more red zone targets. Spectacular catch guy. We love George Pickens. The matchup isn't great, but isn't terrible. The Saints are pretty bad against wide receivers. If Marshawn Lattimore does play, it could hurt him a little bit, but we still for sure like him for week 10. And guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Again, hit the like and the subscribe, and check out SOBET. You get our exclusive content, so many other creators, awesome exclusive content. Go check it out. First link in the description. Thanks again for watching. See you guys next time.